so now that my reference image is in place, I'm going to go ahead and get started with the modeling portion of this bottle. So I'm going to press Shift A and add a mesh. And for that mesh, I will make it a circle, which is going to add a circle right there. And when you do that, this little window will pop up down here. I think if you accidentally like click out of that window and you lose it, you can press F9 maybe? Yes, F9, and that's going to bring the options back up, which will allow you to adjust things. So if you took specific note of how the diameter of a wine bottle, you could type that in here, but I'm just going to scale it based on my reference image. So I'm going to press 1 to go into my front view, and then I'm just going to press, I want to make sure I'm in edit mode here. So I want the scale to stay 1. So any big changes I'm making, I want to happen in edit mode. So tabbing into edit mode, and you can see we're in our vertex select mode. I'm just going to bring that in, and then again in the front view, just kind of start shaping this out. So pressing S to scale, and then I'm going to press E and Z, and just bring this up somewhere around there. And there's obviously many ways you could do this, like with anything in Blender. I want to scale it in, but it's scaling on my pivot point, that's the 3D cursor there. So I'm going to press period and change that back to the default, which is median point. So now when I scale that in, it'll scale from the center where I want it to. So like I was saying, there are a number of ways that you could go about this in more traditional CAD softwares, which is kind of the background I came from. You would probably do like a revolve or something like that. And you can do revolves like that in Blender, but for this particular model, I think this is the easiest way to do it. So I'm just pressing E and Z to extrude it and have it go upwards, and then just pressing S to scale in a little bit. And I'm just kind of going along the shape of this bottle to shape it out. And that's why the reference image is very helpful. I tried this a few times without a reference image, just kind of like what I thought a wine bottle looked like. And I gotta tell you, it just does not turn out as good when you're doing it from your head. So I'm pressing E, and then when I right click, it'll just snap it to where it is, which means we have doubles right there. But now I can press S to scale that in. And I'm kind of just watching this vertex right there. I know that's the edge. It's kind of hard to see. But then I'm gonna go up, and then I'll stop right about there. So again, I don't want to be a snob when it comes to wine bottle shapes. There are a lot, and it took me a long time to just decide like what the heck to go with. But use your own references. Feel free to change up the shape a little bit. But yeah, in general, we just want kind of an even distribution of geometry up and down there, and that will look pretty good. So I'm pressing Alt-Z to enter an X in my X-ray mode. So let's go ahead and do the bottom portion of the bottle here. So I'm going to press Tab to go back into edit mode, and now that I've done a little inspecting. And this part's going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to press, let's do E and then S to bring that in. So let me do that again for you just so you know. So I'm pressing E, and then a lot of times I just move my mouse to like see that the command has been successful. And then when you right click, that will snap it back to where it was. You can see we still have vertexes there, vertices. Gosh, I always get that wrong. I don't even care anymore. And so I'm right clicking to make sure that it's back in place, and then I press S to scale it in. And then I'm just gonna do that. And now Alt-Z to go back into my X-ray mode. I'm just gonna press E and Z. This is another small advantage to using the Dirk custom wine reference images, is that I actually did a little model of the punt, I believe this is called. This is another thing. I was going to try to include as part of the tutorial like some history lessons about the punt, but yeah, there's all sorts of reasons and things why people think the punt is there, and some of them I think actually are legitimate, and I'm sure somebody will tell me in the comments what the punt is for, but I'll leave it to your own imagination right now. So this is all looking fine. Of course, we don't want these edges, and we don't want this jaggedness, and honestly, we want this whole thing to be a lot smoother. So we're going to want to smooth it out. So I can right click and shade it smooth, which is fine. That works okay. Maybe if this was for like a video game or something. But honestly, we want quite a bit more geometry, and that's going to be done with a subdivision surface modifier. So when I add that, it's going to smooth things out quite a bit more. And if we go into our wireframe view here, and we could uncheck optimal display to actually see what's happening with the subdivision surface modifier. But that is basically taking the average between all these points that I made and smoothing them out quite a bit. Now, usually you do want to leave that optimal display on though. When you get into really high poly meshes, a very dense geometry, it could slow down your viewport a little bit, depending on what type of computer you're working on. But yeah, so typically, you'd want to leave the viewport levels a little bit lower than the render levels, just so everything's a little bit snappier, and keep optimal display on. This object is relatively simple though, so I want to keep my viewport and render levels the same, and I'll leave optimal display on. So with what I've got there, it's doing a fine job of smoothing this out. Maybe you'd want to make some small adjustments here to keep it in line with your reference image. But we're getting a few problems, so we'll first tackle this up here. You can see it's smoothing that out, which is, I kind of want it to smooth like that around here and here, but not up here at the top. So what I need to do, sometimes I would do this with a bevel modifier, but essentially we want to add edge loops so that the geometry will be a little bit tighter, up on those edges. So I'm going to press Control R to add an edge loop, and then I can just slide that up. And if you really wanted it to be sharp, you could add like another edge loop right there. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to skip that. But to tighten this up, I'll add an edge loop here, bring it down, add an edge loop here, bring it up, and then we'll do the same thing here. And that's looking just fine for me. I still want a little bit of roundedness, just the way a glass bottle is made. There's you're not going to have super sharp edges. So I think that looks pretty good like that. Now the bottom is going to be the next part I tackle. So if I tab into edit mode here, you can see we've got a straight line all the way down from the way we modeled it. We were using our z-axis to go straight up. But once this has been subdivided, it's a little bit bulbous, if you will. And when we apply our label, that could be a little bit of a problem. I'll show you how you can kind of tilt the label a little bit. But we want to keep this as straight as possible. So one way to do that would be to add an edge loop here and just bring it up, which you can see is going to keep it pretty straight. You also want one at the bottom. But the problem with that is if you slide this edge loop up a little bit too much, you'll start to get what looks a little bit like an edge there. You can kind of barely see it. Maybe if we turn on our cavity and turn those up. No, I can't really see it too well, but there's a little bit of a seam there that I don't like. So it's fine to leave it like that, but let's just bring that down a tad. And then similarly at the bottom, you just don't want any geometry too close to each other. So this is mostly straight, as we can see. And by bringing this down, we were able to kind of create that roundedness there. And here you can see a production of the subdivision surface modifier. So that's still a little bit jagged. So you could even crank that up a little bit more if you wanted, or of course adding more edge loops will give it more to work with. So I think that bottom shape looks pretty good. Maybe what I want to do is just scale this in a tad, just to kind of match the reference a little bit closer. But these references that I created are by no means any like scientifically accurate wine bottle or anything. So don't worry about matching the reference too closely, but I did create those just for you. As you can see, we've got the nice, the Dirk branding on there, Dirk KB, which we'll talk about in well, I think on Teachable, I was going to do a section where I talked about the label first, but here I am recording the first part. I have no idea what I'm actually going to do. So like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. And if you're on Teachable, then let me know how it's going. I really want to start kind of making my tutorials more as like full courses. I think that'll be more fun, serve you better, be a little higher quality, better experience. So anyways, with that note out of the way, we need to add some thickness to this thing. It's not looking so hot there at the top. I'm gonna cut some lips up there. I don't want that. So I'm going to add a solidify modifier, which is going to turn it into a little chunky boy. That actually looks kind of cool. It's like a milk carton or something, but it's going out the wrong way. So I can make it go the other way with the offset option here. Bring that the other way. And then I can bring this thickness down. Now, if you just click and drag, it's going to be a little bit too much. So you usually want to, on pretty much any field in Blender, if you hold shift while you're dragging, it will allow for a much finer tuned drag. So I'm just going to bring that to something like that. Now, we're actually not really going to see the top because we're going to be modeling some foil on there. But for the purposes of the glass shader and things, it is probably a good idea to have this thickness here. So with that done, everything is fine and dandy until we go into our wireframe mode or our X-ray view. We can see that we've got this, it's kind of like so this tight bend, when it gets pushed out with that thickness, is kind of creating this really bad geometry, which we don't want. So the way we're going to fix that, we can't really fix it very well just in the modifier here. So we're going to start applying some of these modifiers to fix some of those issues. So what I'll do first is press Shift D and then X, and I'm just going to hold Control. And I like to bring it out with a snapped increment so that if I need to bring it back into place, I know I can get it right back where it was. You can of course do that with other snapping tools, but that's just how I like to do it. And I'm going to move this bottle to a new collection, which I will call the trash collection, which, as I like to say, if you needed to get back in there and step back a few steps, you wouldn't call it the trash collection, you'd call it the pat yourself on the back for creating a duplicate collection, but that doesn't fit up here. So I'm going to press this little exclude from view layer button, which is going to hide that. And that's great. So now I have, the reason I wanted to do that is because now I'm going to apply the solidify modifier. So to do that, I'm going to press Control A right here, and that will apply it. And I think there's a way you can do it. Yeah, apply right there. When Blender 2.9 came out, I think they changed something about the way you apply modifiers, and it was a little confusing at first, but there's a little drop down right there. You can apply the modifiers. So that's looking dandy, just fine. It got a little bit rounded up there. We'll fix that after the fact. Well, we could, I guess, fix it now. We would want to just do what we did before and maybe add in a little bit of an edge loop there to sharpen that up. But what we really want to do is fix this that whole middle area. And the way I'm going to do that, so I know that from this ring down to somewhere around there should be straight, but now we've got all this other crap going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Alt and left click to select that ring right below, and then I'm going to press X and delete those vertices. And then I'm going to do the same thing right here, X, delete those vertices. And then now what I can do, so basically I've kind of cut that section off. So now it should be its own floating piece of geometry, which I can hover over and press L, and it will select linked. It will select that mesh island, if you will. And now I can press X to delete it. And then I just need to connect these back up. So the slow way to do this would be to just do it one at a time around the outside. That's very tedious. That's probably what I used to do. I, in fact, remember doing that many times, and it is a waste of time. Because what we can do is select that ring and then select that ring, and then in your Loop Tools menu, which, hold your horses, you're probably not going to have that. It is still an add-on in Blender. So you need to go to your add-ons and then go to Loop Tools and just check that box. It's not, you don't have to buy it or download it. It's automatically installed in Blender. It's kind of cool. Blender comes with like so many add-ons already, but you just have to turn them on. And I guess that's so that the software's not too heavy. But yeah, Loop Tools, it's a good one. I definitely don't use it to its fullest feature set, but for something like what we're about to do, it works well. So I'm gonna go Loop Tools, and that's just right-clicking, Loop Tools, and then click Bridge. And that will work wonders to bridge that gap. And sometimes it might be kind of twisted or something. There's this little option out here that you can control whether or not that's twisting or how much it's twisting. So I don't want it twisted. I want it just like that, and that's great. So now though, this is getting rounded over way too much, so I'm just going to add in an extra edge loop right there. And then I think I could probably delete that one if I wanted to, just for the sake of keeping things nice and tidy. Yeah, I think that looks good. So we pretty much have our wine bottle here. I'm pressing R twice just to do kind of a free rotation, kind of inspect it, see how it looks. And I think it looks pretty good. So what I will do now is just go ahead and take my background image because I'm all set with that. And I'm just going to move it into my trash collection so that, of course, if I need it back, it's there, but it's out of sight now. And I just have my wine bottle here ready to do a little bit more work with.